The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Hello, listeners. So how are you today? And looks like sometimes the the technology can be giving us a rough start. But all the same, it's Tuesday morning, and I'm so thrilled to be here because I am with you. And that's the best part of the week. Because you've been with me for years together now, and I'm so thankful to have you as my audience. So I want to thank each and every one of you who got our books last month and reached out to us and shared your opinion with us. So if you have not got the copy, as you see in the back, get the copy for Entrepreneur's Garden, and you'll be seeing the link also in the blooper down here, as well as, so if you get it, the profits from our books help out entrepreneurs impacted by pandemic and other adversities. So you are helping us help others. So thank you for that. And in the same vein, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Every month, just find 1 hour of your time. Yes, 1 hour of your time so that you can help others without any strings attached, without anything. And let's bring on our guest for today, Bonnie Hagemann. Welcome, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm calling in from Kansas City this morning.
Kansas City. Well, how's the weather like over there?
It's beautiful today. We had storms yesterday, but it's absolutely gorgeous today.
So Bonnie, we'd love to hear a bit about you. So share a tad bit as to, what you're doing right now and what's been your most recent project.
Okay, well, I have lots of projects going on. I am the CEO of EDA. EDA has historically been known as Executive Development Associates, was actually a company that was founded in 1982 by a man named Jim Bolt. And he founded the company so that we could create executive development programs. So that's that top of the house in the large corporations, maybe working with the top 5% to give them corporate education. So that's everything from coaching to corporate universities or just a 1 or 2 day program and succession planning, things like that. So he founded the company to do that and to tie it all to strategy. And we were the first company to ever tie executive development to strategy. And he was published about that in the Harvard Business Review and other places like that. So we became sort of this pioneer. And now it's common practice, which is a wonderful thing. But we've changed our name to EDA because we are transforming into primarily a tech company. And we will still have services, but that will not be our primary focus going forward. Will be talent, tech, and trade. And so we're in a huge transformation, which puts me in a transformation.
Well, transformation is good because transformation is what drives innovation. So thank you for sharing that, Bonnie. So, Bonnie, let's try going back to your childhood. Do you recall a moment that was fun or remarkable or that left an impact on you?
Oh, I had lots of moments. So I actually grew up on a farm in Western Oklahoma. So we had about 2,000 acres of wheat, cattle, cotton, and alfalfa. And as a farm kid, we grew up, sun up to sundown. Actually, before sun up, after sundown, we were working nonstop. Now we would play, so I don't want anyone to feel sorry for us like we didn't get to play. But we played while we were working. It wasn't like you had playtime. You had work time, and then you mixed your play in the middle of it. And so, I had this really wonderful background. I had wonderful parents. I was very fortunate. My dad was extremely hardworking, but we felt loved. My mom was hardworking. She was a teacher and helped on the farm. But one of the things that I remember is when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, we were at an auction, and there was an auctioneer there, and I was fascinated by the auctioneer and how fast they talked. And I remember his name. His name was Quentin Jenkins. And my dad was telling me he had this whole team of Clydesdales, which I was also fascinated by these Clydesdale horses. And so I remember my dad looking at me and saying, you could be an auctioneer. And it was just a sort of an eye-opening moment because I had never thought about being an auctioneer. And then he continued to say things like that to me for as long as he lived. In fact, I have a little sticky note on my inside of my cabinet that says, "Next stop, president, why not the top?" He just was always telling me, you can go further. And I don't know how he knew to say that to us, but he did. And because my dad had a genius IQ and a 9th grade education. So I don't know how he knew, but he did. And so he just poured that into us so we can go further. We can do more.
Well, he had experience of life, and he wanted what he had wanted for you. And who knows how his circumstances were, and then that stopped him from moving forward. So he instilled that in you. How powerful. And
It is very
I can see you running in the cotton fields. That is so fun because so many of our children are raised under these sterile environments. You see, there are those suburban neighborhoods, especially if you're talking about cities where they're cookie cutter houses. And yes, of course, some houses may be different, but if you're walking down a historic city and the historic part of the town, I love walking down the historic part of the town and just finding that character in different houses and these established communities where they're like hard oak trees, and who knows, how many kids played under those trees, and there are some carvings out there. So there's so much richness there. So
there is. And there's memory in the trees.
Yes.
Like everything has memory, and you're absolutely right.
So my question to you is that as you were playing, and I was fortunate enough too, I did not live on a farm, but my parents used to love doing picnics. And as part of picnics, fortunately for us, we had a lot of extended family with a couple of farms, and then just going and experiencing nature and seeing how things grow, it's so much more powerful. So based on your personal experience, let's say if you had to kind of redo it, would you prefer growing up on the farm again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was an amazing experience to grow up on a farm. And, I never, even as a farm kid who worked all the time, never thought I wish I could live in the city and, do it differently. I always treasured that time. And, I love what you were saying too about, the historic, because cities can be beautiful as well. And today I travel all the time. I go all over the world. Specifically, I travel more in the US, but I do travel around the world. And it really saddens me to go to another city and to see all of the same stores and all of the same everything that I see in this city or that city. It's just same. And I remember reading an article in the Dallas News, or it wasn't an article, I was looking at real estate. And it said something different in a sea of sameness. And I can't stand the sea of sameness. And I certainly hope that we will go back to being, or forward to being, authentic and different and unique, and having the beauty of the, you know, the solid brick buildings and the things that take time, that are not easy and cheap. You know, I hope we get back to that. And I kind of have hope for this young generation that they're going to take us there.
Absolutely. And that's all the more reason why it's so much precious to treasure, cherish, and support those mom and pop businesses which are taken over. You know, so many times what happens is that there may be a tiny little bagel shop. And I'm not saying this, don't get me wrong, you know, I'm all for Dunkin' Donuts or Brugger's Bakers, or, and folks here, I'm not like proposing anyone, but there is something to be said when you're up in Northeast, that mom and pop's bagel, like which I had visited during my college days, and just kind of going back and seeing and that friendly face that recognized me, that, oh yeah, you know, when I was in New York, that person still remembering me, that I used to come and probably get the basic bagel, because when you're a student, you don't have that kind of money. So you're going for the lowest price, and just kind of sitting down and having, and those connections and the roots that I'm talking about, humanity, because I sincerely believe that the more advent of social media, at the same token, it's connecting. Think about it. You know, you and I here, Bonnie, we're sitting down and having this heart to heart conversation. So bringing that connection back, sometimes you feel that humanity is shrinking. And instead of it shrinking, just kind of taking a moment, finding out who your neighbor is, even if you're living in a downtown building, folks. And I'm not saying that go get chummy, because a lot of times people feel like, oh my God, is that person stalking me or something like that. But whenever if an organic conversation is happening, and of course, looking out for your own safety. So just in the parameters of human beings, taking that one step forward and connecting with people at different levels. So thank you for sharing about the farm. It brought back a lot of my memories, you know, running in mango groves and climbing the trees. So precious. So as you grew up with wonderful values imparted to you by your dad, where did your career take you?
So, well, my career has taken me to pretty incredible places. So I started out, you know, when you grow up in where I grew up, the jobs that women at the time were sort of expected to go into were working on the farm, staying at home, teaching, or you might work in some local store. I mean, there just weren't a ton of options. And so my mother was a high school English teacher, and I decided that I would teach at my career goal at the time was to teach at the university. So I was going to teach literature. So I got my bachelor's degree in English education. And of course, I have to teach high school English for a little while before I can make it up to the university. And I start getting my master's degree in teaching high school English. But I absolutely hated teaching high school with a passion you cannot imagine. And so it didn't fit. Now, let me say this. I love the students, but I was 20 when I graduated from college. They were 18, you know, or 17 and 18. So, you know, I was like, I could legitimately date them if I weren't if I weren't their teacher. I didn't, don't judge me. But I'm just saying, you know, I was really young and it just didn't fit. And the other thing is growing up on the farm, you know, we're all about production, getting results. And it's really hard to see that in public education. And the other thing is I was broke. So I could have made more money teaching or waiting tables. So I get my master's degree. I did end up teaching for 3 whole years, but just long enough to get my master's degree and get out of there. And then I started working with corporate. And that's where I actually ended up working in a career and assessment center because my degree was in counseling psychology. And we were doing career coaching for mid-level managers at Ditch Witch. Well, Ditch Witch, if you don't know that company, is like a boring company, big equipment. And so these are like, you know, industrial people. And so I was like, oh, this is where I fit, because it's all about production and getting results. And so I fell in love with corporate, and I've been there ever since. I did some management jobs. I ended up moving to Dallas. I get recruited by a company out of Palo Alto, California, called CPP. They're the publisher of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and other great assessments. I worked for them for 5 years. And then I started running human capital firms in 2001, built my own. And then in 2007, I acquired EDA from Jim Bolt and Mike Dulworth. And then Jim mentored me for a year and a half, and I've been running it ever since.
What an amazing journey. And it's fantastic. I like what you said, is that I hated it with passion. So many times what people say is that, I lost my passion. But then you did kind of move around. You went after what you wanted and settled into a place where you loved. And of course, as I was watching your face, your face lit up because you said, I'm all about production. I'm all about getting results. So as you talk about that, let's explore some stories that you might have. So many times what happens is that in the corporate, a lot of people, they talk about, and you talked about being authentic. In corporate, the tides are turning, the trends are changing. And yet, do you recall a time when you could not openly talk about your emotions? You had to appear tough about the authoritarian leadership, and now you're moving more towards mental well-being is not a stigma. If you need a mental health day, you can take. And the tides are shifting. So do you have stories which you could kind of compare back then and now?
Absolutely. I have so many stories, and we'll talk about it a little later, but I have a lot of other people's stories, which are in the book that's coming out. But, things are different for us now. I've become a gender equality advocate, and I never thought I would be, and never even really, thought about all of that, because growing up on the farm, honestly, I was raised exactly like a Western Oklahoma boy. Like I was out there in the fields just like they were. And so when I get into corporate America, I probably was a little bit more like one of the guys. And so I didn't feel, I don't think, the same discrimination that a lot of women felt. And I didn't understand it until 2016. And I'll explain that a little later when we talk about the book. But what I can tell you is that when I was coming into the business world, you pretty much needed to look and act and dress like a man in order to be accepted. And you certainly didn't have a lot of emotional, mental time off. Like you don't cry, you don't show your emotion, you get your act together and you show up and try to get them to not notice you're a woman. And so it's changed quite a bit now, and I'm glad it's changing. But there were a lot of us that are, my age and older, who we had to clear the path. And there were a lot of women before us that had to clear it. It was even harder. So, we're still clearing the path. We're not there yet, but we're getting a lot closer.
So when you talk about clearing the path, what obstacles did you observe?
Well, there's a lot of, people in power, they tend to try to stay in power. And so, what I've noticed is I've coached over 200 CEOs and C-suite leaders. I've coached men and women. And once I was coaching a man and a woman at the same time who were competing for the CEO job. And what I noticed is the difference in the way we think. So the woman was like, I want the job, of course, but I'd be just as happy working for him. And I think he would be just as happy working for me. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. And so, on the man side, he was like, I'm getting the job. And in the second, the female would, the woman would say, kind of open that door, like, it's okay if it's not me. That's a step forward for the guy. That's an open door, a gap that he can step in. because she wasn't going to fight for it. And he was. Men are more competitive. Women are more collaborative. And so when I'm coaching with women, I tell them, that it's okay to be who we are, but get the job first. Like, go ahead and compete. Like, go get it. Get in the chair position. Get in the CEO position. Then if you want to be collaborative, you can, because you'll be the boss.
No, definitely. It's having that unstoppable mindset, because you can go after something and still have that grace. And you're absolutely right in that, because as I coach executives also, I've noticed a very similar thing, that what happens is that it's okay if it doesn't happen. And because if I'm pushing, then I'll be seen as aggressive, I'll be labeled. And then all these hesitations that makes women stand in their own way. So what type of hesitations have you seen? Like, you talked about it. This is a really beautiful story. It's about being collaborative. What have you seen where you can still bring the grace of being a woman, and as well as going after what you want?
Yes, I don't think we have to lose our grace. I just think we have to be determined to go get the job, and to be willing to use our logic and use our critical thinking to argue our case. And, there is a woman's story. I'll go ahead and tell you from the book that we're going to talk about, where she went to, her name's Elaine Dorward King, and she was in mining. And, there was a time when they tried to change her job, and she didn't throw a fit. And, they tried to take away part of the job, and she didn't throw a fit. She was very strategic, which is what the story tells. And she was also very professional, but she turned that around and she kept the role she wanted. And so we can do this without being, we don't have to be super aggressive. We just have to be smart, and we have to not give up. I think women still think that we're going to be seen as the B word if we are too pushy. And I think we can be a little more assertive than we have been in the past without ever getting to that line. There's going to be a lot more respect today. And also just people knowing they have to listen now because the tide's turning. So I definitely think we can do this.
Oh, absolutely. The winds have definitely shifted. And you brought up a really good word about being assertive. So in your experience, how would you define the difference between being aggressive and being assertive and confident?
Yeah. So aggressive to me is when you're going after something in a way that could turn negative. It's like you have pushed too far. You're starting to annoy everybody. Or you're just being rude. It's just going too far. Assertive, on the other hand, is not letting go and not giving up, maybe finding different avenues, but still going after exactly what you want.
Definitely. And that's powerful what you have said about. So assertive is also, I just want to kind of expand a bit on that, is being comfortable in your skin, knowing your values. Because so many times what happens is that women hesitate in making the decisions that, if I say this, how is it going to be perceived? And actually, going back to Angela Merkel, I had read an article somewhere, and Angela Merkel is a German chancellor. She has led her country to a really good place as she gets ready to retire. And she had mentioned somewhere that even she would spend more time in prepping before meetings in her initial days. So one of the things is to kind of getting to know yourself, folks. Getting to know who you are and getting comfortable in your skin as to the values that you bring. And let me ask you this. We talk about the values. Values drive decisions, and decisions drive behaviors and results. So what would you be open to sharing 3 to 5 of your values that have become your charter to lead your life?
Absolutely. I'm happy to share my values. And I also want to talk about, and let me come back to the values if you don't mind, because I want to say something
Absolutely.
about preparation. Like what you said about preparation. That's crucial. So I think a lot of people can undervalue the power of preparation. And it is extremely important. So anytime I have a meeting, this is like a calendar tip, is every meeting has a prep and follow-up time booked. And so I am prepared. I show up on time and prepared for everything. And, if I miss something, people are like, they know something's wrong because I'm on time and prepared for everything. And I encourage everyone that I talk to be on time and prepared. So actually, that's a value. Excellence is a value. And that is part of excellence is, the willingness to do the hard work. Like, I've spoken many times. I do lots and lots of keynote speeches. Every time I have a speech, I call my coach, I book time with him, and we work on the speech together. And then I have, days set aside for practice. And, it's just like this value of excellence. They deserve it, that people deserve for me to give 100% effort. So I think, putting the value in that putting value on preparation is extremely important. So excellence, I value results. Obviously, I value getting results. I value partnership. One of the things about our human capital firm, we're just very warm. We want to build a long and lasting relationship. And so like we have clients that we've worked with for 20 years. They care about our staff. We care about theirs. It's that side by side partnership that we really value. And then, the whole, everybody says integrity. So we care about integrity. I would say that, but just to say, getting results in a speedy way, I think those are things that, prep, excellence, get results. Those are probably some of my bigger values.
That's
and
beautiful.
the warmth. Partnership.
Yep. No, I love that working towards excellence, because how you're showing up makes such a huge difference. When you show up for yourself and then you show up for others, then the quest for becoming the best version of yourself just happens automatically. There's so much more power rather than going for like doing versus transferring that doing to being. And yes, folks, the being is not going to happen in a day or so. There's no magic pill. Gosh, if I had it, I would be the first one going for it. But it takes time. First, it's the intention. And as you talked about preparation, just kind of hitting upon that a little bit more, is that you have the intention. You have that choice that, yes, this is my value. I'm going to work for it. And what happens is that, coming from a neuroscience background, folks, as you keep on working on it, it becomes part of you. It becomes you. And you just become that value, and you don't even realize it. It's just like driving a car or brushing your teeth. So Bonnie, as you kind of moved forward in your career, how did the idea of writing your book emerge?
Well, this is actually my third book. So what happened was in 2016, I was, working with some CEOs as an advisor and coach. And because of that, I was working with some boards. And I'm moving more and more into board governance work. And so I really decided that I want to sit on the other side of the table. I worked with public company CEOs, and I wanted to work on a public company board as a board member for one board so that I could experience it from that side of the table. So I just started telling people that I was interested in that. And on the same day, 2 people sent me an email that there was a program coming out by Harvard Business School called Succeeding as a Women on Board, Succeeding as a Corporate Director. And first of all, I had never in my life ever considered taking a class at Harvard. Like, I grew up in Hagemann, Oklahoma. That is a town of 400 people, not in my radar. So it was funny though, I sort of felt like a sign. I was like, I need to go to this because I had 2 people send it to me the same day. And then I had done well in my career, and I had people that would say, because you have to pass certain criteria to be able to get in. I had people that would say, yes, Bonnie would make a good board member. So I get into the program, and it's the inaugural class. Like, they had never had a woman on board program before. So there were 67 women from 17 countries in that program. And they were high-level women from all over the world. Like, there was the woman in my small group was a public company CEO, a woman who was over women's equality at UNESCO, someone's family who started Pakistan. It was just like on and on of these amazing people. And so first of all, the whole class was an eye-opener for me because it was all women, and I'd never been in a program with all women before. I mean, when you work in corporate America, as I was coming up, it was 70% white males. That's who you worked with. And so I just wasn't used to it. It was awkward. And what I learned that week was there was a lot of discrimination going on that I didn't even know about. And so that's when I started to open my eyes to the whole gender equality issue. So the next thing that happened was we leave the class. This is a week-long program. We try to stay in touch for the next year and a half through phone calls every couple of weeks and board education. And Lisa Pent, another person in the class, she's from Wall Street. She was helping us stay together, and I would help her some on the calls. And another class came through. So now there's like 140 of us. And in the mid 2018, I got Lisa and I sat her down at lunch and I said, look, I think we should formalize. I think we should bring this group together and form a network, because if we did, we could change the world in some small way. And so, because you're thinking about all these high level women who are like CEOs and stuff from all over the world. And I do want to say one thing about them, and then I'll stop and let you ask me questions. A lot of people think, okay, they're just a bunch of Harvard elitists, but that is not what I found at all in that program. What I found was mostly women who had worked so incredibly hard. Many came from nothing to get there and were sponsored by their companies to get there. So it wasn't like a bunch of people who, were spoiled that were in that program. These were hardworking women who were making a way.
Mm-hmm. No, that's lovely to hear that that program started. And I'm sure, because a lot of our audience are in different professions, and they may be thinking, I want to join that program. So before we continue our journey and go deeper into the conversation, can you share where can people find the program, and usually what are the criteria, and how long is the program?
Absolutely. So it's called Women on Board, Succeeding as a Corporate Director. And on that, you can go to the school, just type that name in, and there will be an application there. And it will tell you, basically you need someone like a public company CEO or one of the Harvard professors or someone along those lines, could be private CEO, I'm not sure, who will say that you would make a good board member. So, and you have to have some level of senior leadership position to get in there. There's another program that they have, which also these women can come to our network, because the network that we ended up formalizing is called Women Execs on Boards. And you have to have gone through board governance at Harvard, either the program that we went through, or there's a three-course program, a certification that is even more rigorous, and you can go through that and get into our network as well. Now, once you go through one of those programs, and they're expensive, let me just tell you, they're expensive. They're like $13,000 for the women on boards. But if you have a company, they may pay for that for you. And a lot of the women went that way. And it's a week long. You come in on Sunday and you leave Friday at noon. So it's pretty intense, though. You have to do a lot of homework and reading and all that. But it was a great program.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And the reason I asked you for duration is because what happens is there's so many women eggs, because I have got few clients that I know would definitely be interested, is that they don't have enough time on hand.
I know. You have to make the time.
Yeah.
You just have to make it. And it's worth it. Listen, it's worth it, because we built relationships among our members that, we'll have the rest of our lives. And these are like, I can easily pick up the phone and talk to someone in Saudi Arabia, or, Spain or Portugal, or, like we have all these amazing women. So it's worth it. The relationships are fantastic.
And you really focused on one of the important points that I have found that women don't do as well as men. And it could be because women have had other responsibilities about raising children and all that. So many times, what will happen is that if there's a networking meeting or something is going on, if there's a happy hour, and this is, of course, pre-pandemic, and like things have started back up again, post-pandemic, or like even since we are going through pandemic, guys will definitely raise their hands. And what would you tell women about building those relationships? Because having that network, just not having that connection or contact is enough, but having that relationship where you may be stuck. You are in a job, and just like one of the examples you shared earlier on, that, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go with a collaborative approach. Somebody putting that fire in your belly that, yes, you can achieve, you can still have it all. So if you can share your thoughts on the networking and building relationships.
Yes, I can. I think having a network is a value for a working woman that I would encourage that you make that, like, this is really such a crucial part of the work that I'm doing, is building these relationships that I can pick up the phone and call, and being really giving and willing to do the same. Like I want to be remembered as generous, that if someone called me, I tried to help them. And when, if someone calls and needs a connection, I roll out the Rolodex, as they say, like, I know we don't have Rolodexes anymore, but I will use my contacts to help other people. And that was one of the values that we built into our network in the beginning, that we were 100% committed to each other's success, and that we would open up our contacts and make introductions and do what we could. And today, this network that we ended up formalizing, there's been several other classes come through, and today we have 195 members from 23 countries. And it takes us about 5 minutes to get to anyone. Like if I said, hey, I need the CEO of Red Cross in Istanbul, we can get it. We'll have it in a few minutes, because everyone is very generous and helpful with each other in their contacts. So I can't emphasize enough how important your network is.
Mm-hmm. And as they say, sometimes it's been said that your network is your net worth, because, as you said, pick up the phone and call. It's not about having the right resume, having the right qualifications. You could have all those, but it's also essential to have the right connections as well. So tell us a bit more about your book, as to
Yes.
when it's coming out, what's in there, and what can people expect.
I will, so the book came out of the network. So what happened was I had 2 other books, and just before COVID hit, I had pitched 2 book ideas to my publisher, which is Hachette out of the UK, and we go through their Nicholas Brealey, the imprint in the US. But my last book was called Leading with Vision, about visionary leadership. And so I pitched another one along that line. And then I also said, but I have this network. And these women, their stories are incredible. And I'll never forget the first time we got together we started doing an annual retreat every year, or symposium. And the first one was in New York City, and ironically in the Cornell Club, because they were less expensive than the Harvard Club. But, on Friday night, after all the meetings were over, we were sitting down at the bar having a drink with several of the women. And, they were telling stories, and I saw the grit. And the things that they had done were just tough. Like, these were mentally tough women who had made it to a successful place. And I was really impressed by that. So I told the publisher about that. And I said, these stories, they're amazing. And they loved the idea of doing a book about these successful women. But I pitched it like this, like, let's get real. Let's tell the real story. Let's help other leaders understand how hard leadership can be, and that they can make it through. And so the new book is called Courage to Advance. It launches on October 19th. You can start getting it in Amazon and Barnes & Noble and wherever books are sold. And the book it has 36 stories from 36 of the women in this network who have achieved great success. But it tells you one of the hardest things they've been through along the way, how they made it through. And then each woman gives advice directly to the reader. And so it was a fascinating book to write. The stories are amazing. And we wrote them because I do, human capital work and executive development. What we did was we sorted them into 5 key areas. They're key competencies called, they're leadership competencies that are hard to teach. So we're teaching them through storytelling. And they're courage, adaptability, resiliency, sense-making, and vulnerability. So all the stories fit into those categories. So like resiliency, that ability to bounce back, adaptability, your adaptive stance so that you can shift when you need to, your sense-making, so you can stop and reflect and think about what just happened to us and what does that mean? And vulnerability is like when things are so terribly hard. And those stories are particularly moving. But then courage, when you said your neuroscience background, I was thinking about courage. And, courage is one of those things that cause our fight or flight, right? Where we're like, do I move forward or do I run from this? So we talk a lot about that in the stories too. So I love that you brought up your neuroscience background.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. So we are getting to the end of our show. If you were to leave our listeners with 3 things that they could walk away and implement in their lives straight away, what might those be?
Well, that's really a good question. So I think the first thing that I would like to say personally is just one of the themes that came out of the book was choose the right partner. Mm-hmm. It just really matters who your partner is. And, if you're already in a relationship and you don't have that, then try to get support around you that will help you. And then the other piece about that, because I know some people who don't have it, is just know that resistance will make you stronger if you let it make you strong, like working out at the gym. And then if you're a woman, don't be afraid to tell what you do. Like women to a person will undersell themselves. Please tell what you do. And regardless, man or woman, there's more inside of you than what you've given so far. So keep going, go further, just keep going as far as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And where could our audience, if they wanted to connect with you, could connect?
Well, please connect with me on LinkedIn, Bonnie Hagemann at LinkedIn. Also, we have a book website called thecouragetoadvance.com. You can find me on Amazon, Author Central, and on my website, executivedevelopment.com.
Well, it was awesome having you on the show, Bonnie. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
My pleasure. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, you are the bane why I'm here. You are the reason why I keep on doing show after show and bringing you stories so that it can help your life. So reach out to us anytime. And I know you have been awesome reaching out to me, and I love you for that. Sharing what is the area that you need support with, what kind of stories we can bring for you so that we can help you transform not only your lives, but others' lives. And thank you, Jason, for helping us with the technical part and making this show possible. Until next time, be brilliant and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who've experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyapark.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyapark.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.